practice or are you running a business? Valuation is the ultimate KPI.
Hey there, it's Mike Langford. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast, brought to you by Truelytics, the one and only comprehensive advisor transition management platform. This week on the show, I'm joined by Andrew Crowell, Vice Chairman of Wealth Management at D.A. Davidson Co. And we're going to be talking about why it's important for financial advisors to be active in teaching the principles of financial literacy to people in their communities. And even if the folks you're teaching never become clients, there's a ton of value for you and your business in doing so. We cover several actionable strategies for creating a positive ROI for your business through financial literacy education, and they're all great. Now, before we get to the show, quick question. Are you thinking of acquiring another RIA firm? If so, make sure you check out Ian Carnell's video presentation for buy-side CEOs, M&A teams, and general partners on how to conduct 20 target firm valuations in 10 hours, save $140,000, close 3 deals, and grow revenue by 28% and AUM by 46%. Ian does a fantastic job walking through real-world case studies on how firms have rapidly scaled their business by leveraging Truelytics to discover, evaluate, and close M&A opportunities. You can watch the video in its entirety at info.truelytics.com/targeting-RIAs. It's fantastic. All right. You're going to love it. I promise. Check it out. Okay. Lastly, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, the YouTubes, or wherever you like to get your podcast jam on. And if you have a question or suggestion for a topic or a guest, hit us up, podcast@truelytics.com, or swing by and use that contact form on the Truelytics site. By the way, you guessed it, that's how Andrew got introduced to us. Viviana from his PR team reached out, and the rest is history. You got it. Awesome stuff. All right, let's get to the conversation with Andrew Crowell. Well, Andrew Crowell, so wonderful to see you here on the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you. Great to be with you, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, and thank you for your persistence and patience here. You know, I always feel like this is one of those recurring themes on podcasts, is that we're all having to be a lot more patient and empathetic with each other, because inevitably there's going to be some sort of weird technology issue. So first you had it with one of the solutions we use, firewall or something like that, preventing you from using the recording. Then on my side, I'm like, okay, we're testing out this new solution that I want us to use going forward, but I've never actually used it live. Let's go ahead and tinker with that. It works through Zoom, and you had to be patient with me while I, fumbled and bumbled. So thank you very much.
Not a problem.
Exactly. Well, I really, really appreciate it. Well, I'm thrilled to have you on the show, because when Viviana first reached out to me and says, hey, Andrew would be good for the show. He wants to talk about some teaching financial literacy stuff and why it's important and so forth. And I wasn't 100% sure about it, but I'm like, let's chat. I love to chat with people. I love to meet people. And so we started our prep call conversation, and you mentioned that you actually got your start in the investment space in 1995 as a bit of a career transition from the ad agency world, which, by the way, you love the CEO of Truelytics, one of the founders of Truelytics there. They ran a big digital agency for a while. But I wanted to start there because it's actually quite common for advisors in our industry to join the profession as a second or third career, like a career transition. Why did you make the switch?
Well, it's a great question. I was not on the creative side of marketing and advertising, but rather on the data side. Mm-hmm. I worked in, this was database marketing, as we called it back in the 80s. And so I was doing data analytics, evaluating response rates, looking at different media buys, trying to evaluate the cost effectiveness, et cetera. And realized I was pretty effective at that kind of data analytics, which is quite similar to portfolio management. But I felt like I just needed something more. And I had always been interested in financial services, grew up in a family where that was kind of the family business. And so I made the jump in 95, as you say, and never looked back.
That's interesting. How is the data, you know, kind of your background with data influence the way that you approach this business? Because, and the reason why I asked that question is, as I mentioned, a lot of people come into the business in a career transition. They did something else, and at some point in time, they're like, yeah, that's not working, or they get laid off. Who knows why? But I find that when you ask people like, okay, what you did before, and then you find out that actually really informs their approach to the business. So how is that your penchant for data?
Great question. So our advertising agency was very unique. All of the clients were not-for-profit organizations, which meant, in effect, we were fundraisers. They had very limited budgets, as you can imagine. They did not want to spend money on marketing. They wanted to spend money on gaining new donors to their cause or recurring gifts, that sort of thing. So optimizing their advertising spend each year was a big deal. Where were they going to get the biggest bang for the buck based on past results and past historical trends with them and different seasonality studies and the like? How could we make sure that that limited nonprofit budget stretched to the max? And feels a lot to me like helping clients and families optimize their saving and investment plan. They've got limited dollars, but they need to stretch them for hopefully a long, healthy retirement. And so that's what we do. So it really has, I think, that scarcity value of knowing, boy, this is the family's nest egg. There's not going to be any more paychecks coming in. Yeah. So we really need to optimize how we allocate it and plan for the future.
Do you find that your clients, your client roster in general, are folks who really resonate with a data presentation approach, right? So I ask that question because, you know, we talk a lot about niche marketing and so forth. You know, one of the recent episodes we had Nick Cantrell of Green Future Wealth Management on, and, you know, he focuses on a lot of advisors who are really interested in sustainable investing, right? And ESG investing. And so, you know, that's a niche in mindset, if you will. It's not necessarily a niche in the actual customer type. They probably come from all walks of life. They have all different types of professions and backgrounds and so forth, but it's really like what resonates with them. And as I think about, you know, presenting things with data and having a data first, I would imagine some of your clients like that. Like you come out with them like, hey, we're going to go with some numbers. We have some charts. We're going to, you know, this is how we do this. Do you find that, or is that, or am I missing the mark on that? Am I just going to?
No, it's a great question. And individuals all are different. They respond to things differently. In my 26 years of doing this, I found that people expect that you have the numbers and a sound grasp of the analytics behind the investments and their portfolio and what have you. But they ultimately make decisions with their heart. It's got to resonate here. It can't just make sense here. It's got to make sense here. And so finding that way to bridge the behavioral economic side of things to really connect the heart and the head, that's the challenge. And with some, you know, engineer clients that I have, they spend most of their time in the head and a little less in the heart. And others, especially people who've gone through a traumatic family change of some sort, maybe a death or a positive one, a birth or a divorce or a marriage, they're wearing their heartstrings on their sleeves a little bit more. So it's kind of both and. But I think as an industry, we do ourselves a disservice by spending too much time in speaking Greek, you know, alphas and such, and not just talking outcomes, because clients can live on outcomes. They can't live on outperformance. They can live on outcomes if they're positive and consistent with their financial plan.
I'm so glad you brought up that the ability to kind of navigate both, and while you may have your preference may be to lead with the numbers and the analysis, right? And that's where you feel most comfortable as an advisor. And by the way, if that is how you roll, I would imagine the advice to other advisors who are paying attention is like, hey, look, stick with your strengths. You will find clients who resonate with your approach. But you mentioned the ability to do the and or whatever, you know, kind of as you skirt both, if you will. I always talk about, like, in many cases, an advisor is a marital compromise. You know, many of your clients are couples. And while there may be one who's very, very numbers focused, there might be the other one who's very emotional or wants to think about those types of things. Or I always talk about, like, there may be a husband who's really risk tolerant, going for it, right? And the wife may be, hey, no, I'm less risk tolerant, or vice versa, right? Swinging for the fences. So the ability to be to navigate those is really, really important. I'm glad you brought that up.
It's been tougher to do during Zoom meetings during COVID, because the body language is that you can have two spouses there, but it's not the same as when they're sitting across the table and you can really see the lack of comfort that one of them may have with something that's being discussed or what have you. But nonetheless, that's the challenge, is to bridge both of those.
That's, I'm glad you brought that up, because, here you and I are using a Zoom solution and we're seeing each other from the kind of the here up, right? The chest up. And we're not, if you and I were either in your office or sitting across the kitchen table or in a living room environment type of deal, you see shifting him in the seat a little more. There would be fewer distractions too. Whereas, I don't know about you, but like half the time when you're talking to somebody on Zoom, they're looking at something else, right? They've got another browser tab open and like, they're kind of nodding along and like, what did he say? Oh, don't call on me. I'm not paying attention. So I imagine it has to have been a little more challenging. Have you developed any new skills that you could think of that during this pandemic time period that's allowed you to be more effective?
Thank you for asking. Absolutely, yes. I discovered that I could convene a family meeting and get all the family members with a mouse click. And that we used to have to wait until holiday times or vacation times. And that's often the last time of the year that a family wants to come together and talk about finances, the day after Thanksgiving or during the, winter holidays or what have you. But using Zoom, I was able to connect East Coast, West Coast, North, South, even family members that, were in 5 different parts of the country with the ease of a mouse click. So we were able to get some deep family conversations at times that mattered to them, as opposed to when it was convenient because they all just happened to be in the same place. So that was a great learning of this last year, great learning. And then, as you say, the novelty of video meetings kind of wore off after a few months. So we had to find ways to spice it up, and sending a little care package in advance, sending, a Starbucks gift card or something so that they could, caffeine up before the Zoom.
That's a good one. Yes. Bottle of wine that we're both going to have the same bottle of wine while we're talking. I like it. That's every deal. No, that's a great idea. It is true. Like, to keep, there is that we've heard a lot about it, the Zoom fatigue feeling, where people get a little like, I've had friends who, I enjoy talking to on video chat, whether it's Zoom or FaceTime or whatever, saying, I'm just going to do a regular phone call with you, right? Type of thing. And I had an advisor not too long ago remind me that, listen, Mike, most of this business has been built with phone calls. Like the generations before the internet, which wasn't that long ago, built their business via phone call. So don't be afraid of the phone. But also, embrace these technology. I love the fact that you said you were able to get like the extended family together much more efficiently, because you're right. That would be brutally difficult to do if you had to involve the heirs, so adult children and the like. Getting everybody together at the same time in person is monumentally difficult. And so doing it over the computer is great. Let's shift gears into the financial literacy stuff. As I mentioned, your team reached out and suggested having you on the show, talk about why financial advisors should get involved in teaching financial literacy. And I wasn't 100% sure I was going to be interested at first. And the reason why I was like, I struggled with like, why would the advisor audience, right? So the show is the Modern Financial Advisor. Right? So we are sharing things ideas, thought leadership, technologies, things that we think the modern financial advisor should be thinking about and doing in their business or implementing in their business in order to become more efficient, make their business more valuable, be able to serve their clients better, and the like. And so I'm like, I'm a little hesitant, but you know what? Like I said, I like to meet everybody. Let's talk about it. Let's maybe I can learn something. I'm open to realizing that I am wrong like all the time, especially in my initial reaction to things. So when I asked you about like, okay, why is this such a hot button for you? One of the things that you said that got me really interested was, you said clients asked you if you could talk to their kids about finances. I'm like, ooh, that is an interest. That's powerful, right? Like, so let's dive in there and talk a little bit about the need for financial literacy education. Maybe start from that jumping off point of like your clients saying, even though I'm wealthy, my kids are lacking in the education or knowledge when it comes to finances.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mike. To recap, this was born out of a very practical need. My clients were asking me to talk to their children about finances because, those of us who are parents often understand that our children don't always listen as intently to mom and dad as they do to other mentors, aunts and uncles, maybe a coach. And so they were asking me to fill kind of that financial coaching role in their own family. They were wealthy families, and they knew that transition of that wealth to the next generation was going to be critical. But they also knew that that wasn't a conversation they felt confident they could broach with their own children. They felt that a third party could help do that. And so I wasn't out to change the world, one teenager at a time. Originally, I was trying to fulfill the request of my clients and realizing, gosh, Mike, they're not teaching this in most schools. Basic financial literacy. We're graduating kids out of high school without a basic education in money matters. I think that's crazy. This is a vital life skill. And I was talking to, for the most part, well-heeled families and realizing, gosh, their children, even going to private prep schools, they're not getting this education. So we need to do something about it. And thankfully, I think our industry is in a position to address it, kind of one family at a time or one child at a time.
I'll tell you that one, you mentioned that the outreach was coming from your clients. That one hit me and landed hard. There's a saying, and I may be butchering it, but it's something to the effect of rags to riches to rags in 3 generations, right? And it basically the concept is, the generation that makes the money, very often, they have a really healthy respect for making the money. They understood the effort. They developed a work ethic. They understood delayed gratification and all the things that go into a financially successful life. And one of the things you often read is that because they had to suffer and toil so hard, they often tend to give their children a little more of a cush life, right? They want their kids to have a lifestyle that they didn't have. And so they don't force their kids to adopt some of the same lessons, obviously. And the other thing I think that happens is clients, the people who've made the wealth, they made the wealth doing the thing they do. They didn't necessarily make the wealth being experts at financial management. They just, and so they didn't necessarily, like you said, impart that stuff on their kids. And even in high net worth situations, the kids aren't getting that education you mentioned in school. And so it's really easy to squander money and
Yeah, no, it's really true. And it's sad because we are such a wealthy, advantaged country in so many ways, and yet it's such a basic life skill for us to overlook that. And the data shows that the gap isn't closing, it's getting wider. Mm-hmm. And in fact, there was just a study released about a week ago, and it confirmed the same. And it gave states in the United States a grade from A to F. And the commonality among states that got A's and B's was that there was something in the public education curriculum, some sort of a requirement in those states for financial literacy. And so we need to start early. We need to get kids before they graduate. And we can make a difference. We can close this literacy gap.
I want to spend a little more time. I 100% agree. I want to spend some time on the benefits for financial advisors here, because the one that you hit on initially that really got me intrigued was the whole, teaching your clients' kids. And that seems smart, right? To be the one who's educating them. And then you're kind of setting yourself up to get the heirs business. But what are some of the other core benefits for financial advisors who invest their time here on helping with financial literacy education?
Good question. So first and foremost, any advisor who's been in the industry for a while gets that dreaded Monday morning wake-up call when suddenly they find out that one of their important clients is transferring out. It may be because of a death in the family, or it may be because of some family dynamic change. And they realize, wait a minute, I've been working with this family for so long. Why is it moving out? And they learn they never had really bridged the gap to the next generation, the beneficiaries of that wealth. They had been talking to mom and dad, or the matriarch and patriarch, but they hadn't built rapport with the next generation, the people who are going to inherit all that wealth. And that is a wake-up call to all of us that obviously we don't want to lose assets, and we don't want to lose long-standing relationships, but to build relevance with the next generation, for them to see us as the primary financial advisor as a bridge, that family institutional knowledge can be preserved, and we can be a bridge to the next generation, and we can help translate some of those things that you were referencing on the rags to riches to rags. Something gets lost in that disconnect, and that is what's important to the family about money. Why was this wealth accumulated, and what are the expectations of that family about preservation or use of that wealth over time? Do they have a philanthropy plan? Do they, so these kinds of things, an advisor is uniquely positioned in the middle of to be able to translate and be that bridge. So I think first and foremost, we don't like losing assets. Second of all, we can build relevance with that next generation so that they don't just see us as grandpa's advisor or dad's advisor, because they all have friends out of school that are probably going into finance saying, hey, I'd love to help you with your finances. But rather, they can position themselves ahead of that curve as really a trusted advisor to the family.
I like that. So, the defensive strategy to some extent. It sounds weird to put it that way, but there is an element of like making sure you make your practice bulletproof, right? And are aware of the risks that come to your book of business, and not one of the heirs suddenly getting into a situation where mom and dad are elderly, their finances need to be taken care of or whatever, and they just decide, you know what, to your point, I'm going to move all this stuff over to another financial advisor or classmate because they have no relationship with you. Like, they were aware of you, like, oh yeah, my mom and dad has a financial advisor. I think his name's Andrew. He's at some other firm that's not in my town.
Right.
But if you had been talking to them for the last 20 years, they're like, no, of course, Andrew. When I have a question, I call Andrew, right? Even before they're getting their inheritance, they're like, of course I would want to call it, ring him up, get questions. He's always been there for me. I get birthday cards from that guy. He's always, if he's visiting my city, asking if I want to get together and have a beer, and we cover bunches of stuff, and he talks about this type of finances as well. I think that's so smart.
And even if I'm not, I can send a Zoom link and I can pull it together that way. So that was a big learning of this last year is, wow, I can get FaceTime with these individuals, even though we're in different parts of the country. We can connect and we can stay connected. And especially a year as volatile as last year, staying connected and having that FaceTime was really critical.
Yeah. No, you're 100% correct. And that to me is one of the biggest benefits that came out of the pandemic for this profession is it lifted the veil of, I need to be geographically close to you in order to serve you and help you. I'm in Austin, Texas, right? So I don't have to just only focus on people in the general Austin, Texas area. I can have people on the West Coast and the East Coast, right? North, South, East, and West type of deal, thousands of miles away. I can recruit people and work with people that are not in my backyard, right? So long as the licensing is all in place, of course. But such a huge opportunity.
Exactly.
One of the other things that you're focusing your time on is it's broader than that, right? So you're not only talking to the clients, you are going out into the world and kind of evangelizing financial literacy and spending time and investing your time outside of your core business. And in some cases, not even thinking about the need for it to pay off immediately or even directly from the people you're educating on finance. I wonder if you would talk about that and why that is valuable to you, your business, and why other advisors might want to adopt something like that as well.
Well, it's a great question. Having identified this literacy gap, even among our own clients, realize, boy, you look outside your clientele and there's a whole big world of teenagers and young children that are not being exposed to it, that are not probably going to be your target clients anytime during your career. They might not even be the children of your target clients. But what about them? Who's gonna intercede and try to get their trajectory bent in a different direction for the positive? And so our firm, we over the last several years developed this curriculum that we call MoneyWise, which is a 4 to 5 week program, an hour a week, that we take into schools, synagogues, recreation departments, boys and girls clubs, YMCAs, and try to teach these basic financial literacy concepts. And I think the thing that is, we talk in our industry often about the nobility of our profession. You know, we are helping families with something that really matters deeply to them. They're entrusting their net worth to us, and we have to do the right thing. We're acting as fiduciaries. We're preserving and growing that wealth to help them accomplish their goals. And that is a very, very noble calling. But at the same time, Mike, I can think of few things more noble than taking the knowledge that we employ every single day and investing a few hours in your local community and sharing that knowledge with some kids that aren't getting that in school right now. And yet they're going to graduate come next June, and they're going to be launched out in the world. They may be going into the workforce. They're going to get their first paycheck and not even know what withholding is, not even know how to create a budget to live within. And yet we all have smartphones, and all these kids are able to transfer money and use PayPal and do all these things. We need to get in front of that and get them some basic financial skills before they graduate. And so that's what we're trying to do with the MoneyWise program.
I love it. I really do love it. It's, you know, I do some coaching. You know, both my kids play basketball, and while they were younger, I was able to coach because, you know, the skill level wasn't as awesome as it is now. So, but it's 100% correct. I was volunteering my time as a coach with no expectation of any type of return, just because I wanted to help out, and you're leaving a mark, right? You're hopefully letting kids know that people care about them, letting them know that they can develop confidence in something and get better at something, even if they've never tried it before. And the same thing is true here when it comes to teaching people about managing personal finances. Awareness, as you mentioned, some of these kids don't know about withholding, especially if they're coming from a household that might be working under the table or something of that nature. Then get the first check and like, who's this FICA dude taking some out of my account, right? And what does that mean for me? And so I think it's, you know, there is the element of, you know, sowing the seeds. You hope that maybe some of these eventually do become clients, but there's also the element of like, hey, making a more vibrant economy. Right? That fewer people are not financially successful. Fewer people are potentially having to rely on state assistance or federal assistance to get by. Instead, they're having a vibrant economy, and then they're breeding. When they get married and have their own family, they're having a more successful and vibrant family because they have a stronger foundation. Right?
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great. And two parallels off that, Mike. The first is, you know, often in our profession, clients don't say thank you as often as advisors we would like them to do. They say, well, I hired you to do this, so good job. And that's the big bear hug from a client. My experience and that of all of my associates who have presented this curriculum is eyes wide open. Thank you so much. I had no idea. And these young, impressionable future leaders of our country, they're starving for this, and they're so appreciative. And the second thing that I reference is it's been so rewarding to have their parents come back and request if we could do the same kind of program for the parents of the students that were in the program. Because the parents say, gosh, my son or daughter came home and they're talking about topics, and I'm not sure I'm equipped to answer their questions about it. And so, again, the nobility of our profession, I just find that the advisors and associates that have gone into their communities and presented this, they're sitting up straighter. They're proud. They realize what we do really makes a difference. And even if it doesn't make a financial difference for me with this young family, it's going to make a difference for them. And that, as you say, makes for a more vibrant future economy. Hopefully it means smaller payroll and retirement that we're going to be funding down the road because people will have prepared and saved appropriately. So it's very rewarding.
I love that. I love that you talk about the pride and engagement that advisors have there. And I imagine it's particularly acute for younger advisors, right? So who are early in their profession. You think about if you're early stage advisor, regardless if you're, a 25-year-old advisor or you're like a mid-career transition advisor at 35, 40 years old, when you're new, it's just so important to start talking to people about financial management, right? You're still building your book of business. You're getting comfortable with the notion that you studied this. You know more than 97% of the population walking the earth about financial management stuff. And you build your confidence talking to other people about this, guiding them, even if it's not going to be a scenario, as you mentioned, where the people in this room are going to be my clients immediately, if ever. The fact that you're getting the reps in, kind of going back to my basketball analogy, it's like, you got to get reps in. The best way to get better at basketball is to play basketball, right? To go out there and practice, to work on your shots, to work on that type of stuff and get out there and run. You're going to get better just by virtue of being out there. Well, I think the same is true here in our profession, right?
Yeah, no question. And going back to where we started about the heart versus the head part, if you're getting too quagmired in data with teenagers, their body language, you lose them right away. So you realize how to speak the language of finance in simple, clear explanations that people can relate to. And I think those are good reps for every advisor in our industry. Because maybe it's as the years go by, we sort of think our sophistication lends itself that we can use, Greek language to describe what we do. But boy, the rank and file, they're not impressed with that. They just want to know, hey, can I retire on time? Yeah. Is that what that meant? Yeah. Yes, you can. But I should have led with that.
Exactly. I should have talked about your goals and stuff like that, and what's important here. You just hit on something there. Almost by accident, I think, just in the course of the conversation, like it's not just important to get the reps in, but to talk to people who may speak a little bit of a different language, may interact with the world a little bit differently. So I've got a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old. The way they consume information is different than the way that I consume information, right? My son specifically, the 16-year-old, it's not that he's 100% resistant to long-form content consumption. He's much more attuned to short form content consumption, right? So things on Instagram and TikTok and so forth. And so if you are, as you mentioned, out there talking to young people who blink your eyes and those young people will be 35 really quickly. I love the look on advisors' faces now when I mentioned that, millennials are like in their 30s and some of them are in their mid to late 30s now. And they're like, because they always think of millennials, they're thinking of this college kid. It's like, millennials are like moms and dads now, entering some prime earning years, right? So being attuned to how those people who might be clients, or it might be the people you're interacting with, or might be the people you're recruiting into your business someday, how they talk, what makes them tick, right? Exactly. Do I have to articulate something a little bit differently? Like you said, being concise with your language. I think that's so smart and another benefit that comes out of this.
Oh, you're correct. And the more practice that somebody puts in client presentations or money-wise presentations, they learn to speak a different language than probably what they were speaking before. We tend to think we impress with our Greek language and our alphas and betas and Zephyr curves and things like this. And the client just wants to know, am I okay? Am I going to run out of money before I, finish my life? Do I have enough healthcare coverage to see me through if I got a diagnosis? And that doesn't take sophisticated language to say yes or no.
Yeah. It's interesting. I had a friend of mine who really left a mark on me when he mentioned, like, listen, Mike, this is a business, this industry, the wealth management industry has made its bones on the opacity and scarcity of information, that things are difficult to understand. And so as a result, they need us, right? And I think there was a misunderstanding on behalf of the industry that the products need to be hard to understand, that the information needs to be presented in a way that's really difficult, like the graph's going to be overly crazy looking or whatever, so that you are earning your keep as an advisor. But the advisors that I know are really successful, to your point, it's actually not that complicated. You just have to be able to communicate with ease, make the client feel comfortable. Because as I say on the show all the time, listen, everybody else has the same stocks, bonds, and mutual funds as you do. They all charge about the same amount of money for their services. They all have about the same level of services. It's how you resonate with your client that's really going to allow you to build your business.
Yep.
So I think you're 100% on that. I'm sure like many advisors and people who are listening and or watching this show are nodding along, but there's probably that little inkling in the back of their head, like, okay, this is great. I'm going to feel good about this. I see how connecting with the heirs of my clients is smart defensive strategy to make sure I keep my clients happy and make sure I keep the heirs with the business should anything happen. But there's probably a little bit of like skepticism is maybe strong, curiosity about like, okay, can I really do well while doing good here, right? Is this really going to help me grow my business? What would you say there? Like, how does this type of approach lead to their business experience and growth?
Great question. And I'm not at all surprised that there would be skepticism. And I know how busy advisors are with all the duties and responsibilities and regulatory hoops we have to jump through to think about taking time out of production to do something like this. It's a trade-off. But I told you I was a data guy. And in March of this year, our company did a survey of roughly 1,050 U.S. investing adults who had means to invest. And we asked them a series of questions. And the first question we posed was, give yourself a grade, A through F, on your personal financial literacy. And I was stunned to see that the largest single response, 36%, was a C.
Wow.
And among women, it was 42%. And we know from surveys, most survey methodology, that people self-bias positive. We tend to rate ourselves a little bit higher than we think we really are. And if we give ourselves a C on average, that means I think an awful lot of people believe they're below average with their financial literacy. So to your question, Mike, this matters. Yeah. And you're going to be presenting it. You don't have to just present to teenagers. You can present to young families. You can present, they all need the literacy gap closed. And I would be stunned if an advisor didn't find that they not only were sitting up straight or proud of their profession, but also resonating with some families who say, I need what you do. I might be too small of a client for you, but could you help me? Or could you help me find an advisor that could take me on? And maybe that advisor has a junior partner or somebody else they're training up, and that family could start with them with the senior overseeing. But I think there is business to be found this way because it resonates so widely across the country.
Yeah, no, I 100%. And then you can't underestimate when you give back to your community in this type of way, word gets around, right? That you're doing
absolutely
good things. And so whether you're going into an organization, whether it be a youth group, by the way, there's probably some other business leaders, right? They're involved in that youth group because they care about it as well.
Yep.
So there's going to be some positive karma that will
absolutely
translate into business.
The local Rotary Club is going to give Mike an award for selflessly volunteering and donating your time to teach high school kids about financial literacy. And guess what? It's local leaders in the community from different professions, all of whom might ask you for a business card. And so I think there's a practical reason to do this as well. And it matters. People recognized during COVID that they did not navigate 2020 as well financially as they could have had they been better prepared financially. We found that 44% of white respondents said that they could have managed COVID better had they had the education, but it was 60%, almost 2/3 of non-whites that said the same. These are adults. These are adults that have the means to invest, and yet universally almost they were saying, we need help.
Yeah, that's amazing to think about that. And it's so true. It's like, me and my family are very fortunate, right? And I almost feel a little uncomfortable saying it, like business actually improved during COVID, right? It just worked out in that favor, but that wasn't true for everybody. And if you'd known that, hey, you may be going through a period of darkness, some storms might be coming. Are you know, bust a metaphor, I guess, but like if you're able to ride out some rough seas, right? Are you capable of doing that? Do you and your family have some resilience there? Do you have the alternatives to make other money, financial income streams happen in the event that you lose your primary? You know, that type of conversation is a really, really important one to happen. I know we're coming up at the end of our time together. We had some, like I said, curveballs at the beginning, but I wanted to cover a couple of quick things here. Number one is how to start, because I have a feeling some of the folks that are paying attention and they're here at this point in the podcast and in the video are like, okay, yes, I get this. I feel a passion here too. You've spoken to me. I'm going to get off my butt and get going. What is something that you would say to them? Like, what's the best way to get the ball rolling in their court?
Great. Well, I would say start where you are. If you have not yet offered up to clients your willingness to help educate and teach their children about basic financial concepts, you may want to start right there, because that's helping you bridge that relevance to the next generation. It's starting with a family that's already important to you and that you don't want to let down. You're going to get the thank yous from your clients for having invested that time. So I'd say start where you are. And then secondly, look a little bit outside of your practice and say, where am I plugged in? Am I a coach of a basketball team? Am I volunteering at the local Boys and Girls Club? Am I involved in a youth group, as you say? And look for opportunities there, because chances are there's kids, teams, families coming together for various reasons, but they don't have a program like this. And you could perhaps plug and play on an existing chassis to get in front of some additional families and kids. The thought of going, oh gosh, where do I start in my local community? And I don't know anybody. Maybe I just call the city hall and ask around. That can be kind of a daunting task. But if advisors start where they're already plugged in, I think word will get around. And even if you get turned down, let's say you are coaching a basketball team and say, hey, I'd love to take 30 minutes after one of our practices to just run through a few things. Okay, wrong time, wrong place, wrong subject. Yeah. But he may say, I do this thing at the Boys and Girls Club on Saturday mornings at 9:00, and I'll bet you this would be a perfect plug-in for there. Yeah. And so asking the questions tends to open the doors. So that's how I would get started.
That's so smart. Start where you are. One little thing that as you were going through those options of how to start, that just got me thinking is like, ask your clients what's important to them. Like, what organizations are they involved in? So whether it be if they're coaching basketball, if they're involved in some other youth group, if they're involved in their church or whatever, and just say, hey, I'm willing, if you ever want this is something we offer to our clients for the communities that they're a part of, happy to come in and do some whatever basic financial literacy program, or you come to mind. You can actually bring your group here, and that's something you can offer to your group or whatever. I think that's a really smart, and with the notion of, hey, listen, there's no expectation, right? That there's right. No pitch, there's no financial pitch here other than financial wellness is really, really important.
Right. And if you started with their children, that's kind of proof of concept, right? Yeah. They could say, wow, my kids, we're having different conversations today than I thought we would have been able to have because of the time Mike invested in talking to them about these concepts. I've got some friends, I'm involved in an organization, and I would love to recommend you to them. The work's being done for you at that point. You're being referred as a financial expert to be able to present the program into different audiences.
That's amazing. I love it. Well, we've reached the end of our time here. I am sure some folks are going to want to follow up you. I'm sure there's advisors who are like, oh, I got to talk to Andrew. What is the best way for people to reach out to you and have a conversation about this, about how they can implement it in their practice, or if we can get you to come in and talk to our community?
Perfect. Social media is the best way to find me. Andrew E. Crowell on LinkedIn, and at Crowell45A on Twitter. And I sometimes get a day behind in responding to the inquiries, but I would certainly love to meet anybody and chat with anybody about how they could take a similar program to MoneyWise into their local community or just with their clients' children.
I love it. I love it. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation, Andrew. I really appreciate you
Thank
giving
you, Mike.
us the time for this. It's very generous of you. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you for the invitation. Appreciate it, Mike.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for listening to and or watching this episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. It's always fantastic to have you with us. I hope you got a lot out of this show, like more than just, hey, I enjoyed the content. I hope you got a little bit of motivation out of this show to give back to the community, to help out. And yes, some of it is filled with enlightened self-interest, right? Educating the heirs, the children of your clients. Smart move, right? But also getting out into the community and giving back that way just has a way of giving back to you as well in the long run. I love it. Really, really good stuff. So huge props and a debt of gratitude to Andrew Crowell for coming on the show and sharing some of the things they're doing on their program with us and giving us the tips, techniques, and strategies to do it ourselves. Love it, love it, love it. As always, make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Give it a share on the socials. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, go check out that amazing video by Ian Carnell. Again, info.truelytics.com/targeting-RIAs. If you're even remotely considering acquiring another RIA firm or several RIA firms to scale your business, you got to watch that video to see how you can do it because it just kicks butt. Awesome stuff. All right. Until next time, be nice to each other, okay? We will see you next week on the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. See ya. Bye.